Hello, everyone. My name is Esther, and today I will be talking about hemoglobin, illustrating how oxygen binds to heme, along with the binding capacity of oxygen to heme in the lungs, and how that differs from that in the capillaries. I will also be talking about high carbon dioxide interacting with water can affect the pH of the capillaries. First thing first, to start off with a little background information regarding hemoglobin. What is really hemoglobin? So, hemoglobin is defined to be a protein in your red blood cells that carries oxygen to your body's organs and tissues, and then transports carbon dioxide from your organs and tissues back to your lungs. Hemoglobin is composed of four main protein chains, two being alpha chains and the other two being um, the beta chains. And they each contain a ring-like heme group containing an iron atom. Oxygen also binds reversibly to these iron atoms and is transported through blood. On the left side here, on the first image, which is A, it contains the two alpha chains in human hemoglobin, and on the right side here, on the second image, on B, it contains the other two beta chains of the human hemoglobin. Um, so on this, we will see how oxygen binds to heme and the binding capacity of oxygen to heme in the lungs. So the oxygen must be transported in the blood from the lungs because the partial pressure of the oxygen is relatively high. I believe it is approximately 100 torr comparing to tissues, where the partial pressure of oxygen is much lower, typically about 20 torr. And in the lungs, hemoglobin saturated with oxygen, approximately 98% of the oxygen binding sites are occupied. In tissues, on the other hand, the saturation level drops to about 32%. And now the question is, how does this differ from that in the capillaries? Uh, so the binding of the oxygen molecule at the 6 coordination site of the iron rearranges the electronics within the ion, essentially shrinking it and allowing it to migrate into the plane of the porphyrin. The electronic structure and the magnetic properties of the hemoglobin, which constitute the foundation for functional magnetic resonance imaging, have also changed by this time. And when oxygen binds, the quaternary structure undergoes um, through a alterations, through changes, which correspond to the T2R state transition. And on this slide here, we will look at the standard curve swings to the right as the pH decreases. And this occurs because different amino acid residues, such as histidine, stabilizing the deoxyhemoglobin in the T state at higher H plus ion concentrations. Because the T state has a lower affinity for oxygen than the R state. R state has higher acidity, causing hemoglobin to bind less O2 and then more H plus. So hemoglobin, it causes more hemoglobin to bind the oxygen and then, less oxygen and more hydrogen. And this is known as the Bohr effect. And on this slide here, it is basically just the two states that was mentioned in the previous slides, the T state and the R state. The T states here, it's just showing that it is where the conformation is not favorable to the oxygen binding, and then the R state here is the relaxed state on the right side, showing favorable conformation to oxygen binding. And last but not the least, we will be looking at how carbon dioxide interacting with water can affect the pH of the capillaries. So the release of oxygen from hemoglobin is triggered by the presence of carbon dioxide. The first way it does this is by slowing the pH at high amounts of carbon dioxide. And this happens when the carbon dioxide combines with water to generate carbonic acid, which then dissociates to release proton H and then the bicarbonate ion, lowering the pH. The carbonic anhydrase, which is an enzyme found in the red blood cells, it speeds up this reaction really, really fast. And then the image here on the right is just showing that when water reacts with carbon dioxide, the carbonic acid is formed, from which the hydrogen ions separate, and it increases the acidity of the system. And yeah, that ends my presentation. Thank you for watching.